Hello, my friends out in the internet. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm here to update you on the March 10th, 2020 Democratic primary vote that just happened and what's happening in the Democratic primary process right now. As you can see, I have a little bit of a different setup. I decided to get a white background just because I've noticed in the videos and people have said to me that the black background, it's tough to kind of see my face with my hair and sometimes the clothes that I'm wearing. So I figured a light background, we'll see how it works. I'm still changing things up here and just going with the flow. But the important stuff is that the primary just occurred in 6 states. Those states were North Dakota, Michigan, Mississippi, Washington, Missouri, and Idaho. And the people have spoken. Joe Biden is seeming to run away with this nomination. Bernie Sanders is still in the race, but more and more it seems that Joe Biden is going to be the Democratic nominee. And we have to come to terms with that in one way or another. We're talking less than a 1% chance at this point that it's going to be Bernie Sanders. But I'll get into all of that and everything, the speculation about what Bernie can do at this point, and how he will transition from campaigning for his own platform to campaigning for a Democratic platform at large. But it seems that the big takeaway from yesterday is that voters are voting based on electability more than anything. And it's not so much that they don't think that Bernie Sanders is not electable. It's just that the way that this is played out, it seems that it turned into a contest of electability between Bernie and Joe Biden. And at the right moment, the media and the establishment stepped in. Well, the media has always been on the side of Joe Biden. But at the right moment, the establishment stepped in and turned it around for Joe Biden and pushed him this far. And he's being propped up by them as we speak. But anyways, it's funny because I think there's so many polls where it seems that the voters are voting based on electability. However, when they are asked about the proposals on Bernie Sanders' platform, the overwhelming majority of Democrats love the issues that Bernie Sanders is bringing to the table and the platform that he is proposing. And so it somehow has to be reconciled, or I don't know if it does have to be. It seems that Joe Biden, an empty vessel for whatever the establishment wants from him, someone that hasn't brought any ideas to this race, is good enough, just if he's electable enough, likable enough, which he is. He's pulling out better numbers than Hillary Clinton in some states, worse numbers in others. So my theory about him doing worse than Hillary Clinton stands in some cases, does not stand in other cases. But if he's likable enough, then the establishment is fine with it. It seems that voters are okay with it. But it's really fascinating that he's winning this whole electability thing. It's crazy because if we look back on this primary process, and it started last year when people started announcing their candidacies and they started talking about their different platforms. And you have candidates like Elizabeth Warren, who talked about the corruption rampant in Washington D.C. and in corporate America. And then you have Andrew Yang, who told us to make America think harder. And he talked about universal basic income. This is a brand new topic being introduced to the American electorate. And then you have Tulsi Gabbard, who is still running her race. Numbers are not looking good for her. They never did the whole time. But She is a candidate that I would say she's a moderate, and she really was talking, and she's a moderate who has populist appeal, in that she really brings up issues that appeal to voters who don't necessarily align with either the Republican or the Democratic primary, to conservative and progressive voters. But she was talking about these never-ending wars, and when are we finally going to stop getting engaged in the world in these malignant kinds of ways. You had Marianne Williamson, who brought about the conversation of spirituality in politics, something also completely new in a presidential primary field, and not in a religious kind of way where, Republicans have kind of said, oh, we need to bring God back into school, we need to legislate from the Bible. That's been there in the past. But Williamson brought about a different kind of spirituality. Bernie Sanders, the OG, the legend at this point, who talked about Medicare for all, and he talked about it in 2016, and then healthcare was the issue in this primary. Even Julian Castro, he had some great ideas with regards to education and to child care. You have all these ideas in the Democratic field. All these ideas. And what ends up happening is that the media environment is such that they convince the people of this country that it was Russia that elected Donald Trump. And Russia is the biggest threat, not the disparity in wealth. And the Democratic National Committee swoops in, pressures all these fake-ass progressives, not progressives, fake-ass liberals, fake-ass politicians, like Klobuchar, like Buttigieg. They even get O'Rourke to endorse Biden. They all jump in and say, all right, we're going all in on Biden at the right moment. When Biden has that victory in South Carolina, they push for him right after. He has a huge win on Super Tuesday. Biden has 0 major media appearances since then. No Sunday morning talk shows. They're literally propping him up. Propping him up. This is an empty vessel. No big ideas. Except, we're just going to go back to Obama. That's his idea. They're propping this guy up. Every time he speaks, he looks like he looks like a shell of his former self. He is no way as sharp as he once was. And somehow this is the electable guy. That's the one that the media and that the Democratic National Establishment is telling us is the most electable. And sure, I think Bernie Sanders is even older, but Bernie Sanders is sharp as hell, and he's been running a rigorous campaign, and he doesn't look like he's slowing down. Yes, he had a heart attack, but like I said, I'd vote for Bernie Sanders even if we had just one day of him in office, just so that he could set up a progressive government or a Bernie Sanders envisioned government to kind of lead us into the future. But somehow Biden is the electable one. All those names that I mentioned, Warren, even with her problems with lying and her issues and how self-absorbed she is, Castro, Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, Marianne Williamson, Bernie Sanders, they're all way more electable than Joe Biden. I have a lot of reservations about how Joe does against Donald Trump, one on a debate stage, but also in the general election as well. Even so, all the other candidates, the establishment candidates, Beto O'Rourke, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, they're way more electable than Joe Biden. But things didn't go well for them. So, and I guess the DNC wanted to give the veneer that they weren't interfering in the whole thing, but they definitely played a heavy hand in the whole thing.